The message today for all New Yorkers is to take measles seriously. Department of Health will issue violations and fines to people who remain unvaccinated.
All right, back here in the Bernie and Sid in the Morning Show on 77 WABC. We just did a whole segment on the measles and told you guys that during our conversation yesterday, Allison Joseph, a.k.a. Jew in the City, who's been on the show before, contacted me, said, boy, I really want to come on with Bernie and you and kind of tell everybody what's really going on inside the Hasidic and Jewish community and how it seems, the way they're reporting it's making it sound like the overwhelming majority of folks are not getting vaccinated, when that is not really the truth. So with that said, Allison Joseph, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nice to have you. Let's start with this before we get into this conversation, just to really further your credibility here. I was introduced to you by a mutual friend, Kosher Troops. They do a fantastic job. Help them out, donate today, helping our servicemen, food, clothing, all the things they need. A while back on a different topic inside the Jewish community. You have now become known as Jew in the City, which is funny and cute. How exactly did you earn that moniker?
Well, I grew up Jewish, but I had a lot of negative feelings about the Orthodox community. I didn't know any of them up close and personal, but I sort of read negative headlines and I sort of saw them on the street and thought they were so weird and backwards. And then when I actually got to meet some in real life, I realized that there were all these wonderful people that never get reported on. They never get their stories told. And the media really does a real disservice to sharing the nuance of the community.
Did your family share the same opinions on the Hasidic community, or was it just you?
Definitely my family. My mother had sort of some like fond memories of like religious grandparents, but my father was actually quite anti-religious. And it was really this line of like us and them, we're normal Jewish, they're crazy Jewish. And when I started to become more observant in my teen years, all of my family and friends thought I was losing my mind, I was going off the deep end. And I tried to explain to them that you can live in the world and live an engaged and open-minded and educated life, but also live a spiritual life. And that's what I was doing. And so because this was sort of what I was doing on my own, I realized that as social media was essentially invented, we could now use this platform to share the stories that don't come out to the mainstream.
By the way, you're all over YouTube. I just want to let people know. Just type in Jew in the City, and a plethora of videotapes come up of you talking about the Jewish faith and living in the city, and it's fairly interesting. But you're here with us this morning because of this measles epidemic, quote-unquote epidemic, and this anti-vaxxing, the perception that Orthodox Jews are against vaccinations for measles.
Yeah, so I'm so happy to be here, and I really appreciate the time because over the last, I would say, week, the number of requests that have come into our organization and website saying, what can you do? Can you speak on behalf of us? Like, our voice is not being represented. The media is really focusing on a few voices and making it seem like this is all of us. How do we fight back? So I was so happy that when I contacted you, Sid, you wanted to bring me on right away because the reality is that this is not the prevailing opinion. Before I sort of bash the other side, I do want to say that I believe that the people that are anti-vaccination are actually coming from a positive place. I'm not a hater. I'm not a mean person. I think that they actually, whether they're the hippies in California or the Jews in Brooklyn, I believe they are trying to use what they understand as the best information out there to protect their families and their children. That being said, they are very, very misguided, and 99% of Orthodox rabbis across the spectrum say vaccinate your kids. It comes down to number one, the Torah tells us we have to protect our lives. Number two, the Talmud tells us that we have to use the best science and medicine of the day in order to form that opinion of how to protect our lives. And the prevailing medical opinion, as we all know, is to get vaccinated.
I'm glad you mentioned the Torah and the Talmud, Allison, because Bernie and I have talked about this. This is not a religious thing. A rabbi goes up during Shabbos on a Saturday, does his sermon, says don't vaccinate your kids. That's his opinion. There's nothing based on religion. There's nothing in the Jewish religion that says you shouldn't do that. In fact, you just said the complete opposite. That the religion states, be healthy, take care of everybody. So I'm glad you made that point. It's a very important point. There is nothing in the religion. These are just a very few rabbis' opinions.
It's not only is it not it's not against the religion. The religion actually tells you that you should guard your life, you should vaccinate.
Right.
And again, I don't think that there is this plethora of rabbis getting up in their sermons on Shabbos morning and telling them to do this. I think this is literally a few voices that have just given people permission not to if they feel compelled. But there's actually no one that I know of any substantial, substance in the rabbinic world that's saying do not vaccinate.
Nope.
So even the most sort of strong anti-vaxxers, even what they can show is no rabbi saying don't vaccinate. It's even just a permission that if you've done your research, then you have permission not to if you think this is the healthiest choice for your family.
But even though it is a small minority within the Orthodox community, why do you think it's still larger than it's too high a percentage of the religion, the group, whatever? Why do you think it's resonating with those people?
So I think that I was looking up sort of national averages yesterday. It looks like 99% of people currently are vaccinating, although people are more suspicious of vaccines today than they were a decade ago. I think that the numbers in the, sort of Orthodox community are lower than sort of the hippie California segments, but are higher than the general public. And it's hard to say why that is. I think it could be some sort of a fad that someone got into sort of this holistic. I think what happens is they sort of get into clean, green living, and then sort of the anti-vaccination thing comes into that, even though that piece doesn't make any sense. The interesting thing is that I'm reading some quotes, in the New York Post, different places where a woman's saying, God made my child perfect.
Yeah.
We're not Christian scientists, meaning we actually believe that vaccinations and medicine were created for the purpose of curing illness. And so there's even a Jewish idea that God creates the healing before he creates the, sort of the makkah, the illness. That this is
right.
So this is a concept that we don't just leave. And even saying God created my kid perfect, even for circumcision, we have this idea that actually a person is not born perfect, that they actually need to, changing. Sure. And so it's not, so seeing these quotes being said in the name of Judaism is so frustrating because it's actually completely against Judaism.
How about
That's
the measles parties?
Yeah,
that must drive you crazy, right?
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. There's two things. We have a responsibility to protect ourselves, and we have a responsibility to not endanger others. So to protect yourself, if you come to this conclusion that this is the best way to do it, I'm not the kind of person that tells someone else how to live their life. Certainly when someone's kids are involved, that starts to become concerning because we don't want anyone's kids to get sick. But if someone, say, wants to, follow this philosophy and live in an island or homeschool or, only get Amazon deliveries and never leave the house, and that's what they want to do, I may worry about their kids, but at least that's not endangering someone else. But when you take your philosophy of this and then you endanger other people, and look, it looks like it's about 1 in 1,000 cases end up in mortality, and then there's also organ swelling and other complications like that. So it's like you said before, it's not a crazy epidemic, but it's also why play with this? Why risk this?
Why even go? Well, there's thousands of people inside the community. We've got 238 cases, so obviously the number is not a huge number. But why even go there? Allison Joseph, Jew in the city. She has a friend with her today, like she did last time, Mayor Fertig. Let me ask you this. One of the concerns inside the community is stories like this further anti-Semitism. Now, we've seen, Allison and Mayor, some really sad examples over the last couple of months, from the Democrats in power to what's going on in our local neighborhoods. Anti-Semitism clearly on the rise. The last thing we need is another scenario to add to that. So two things at play here, Mayor. A, how would this, in fact, cause more anti-Semitism? And are you guys both really alarmed at what we're seeing lately?
So the thing about hardcore anti-Semites is they don't need an excuse, really. It's very helpful to latch on to things. And in fact, if you look back in Jewish history, if you look back at the plagues of hundreds and hundreds of years ago, a lot of them were blamed on the Jews. Ironically, the Jews of the time had religious guidance that said, wash your hands, bathe. There were all sorts of things that were part of the faith that probably, even unbeknownst to everybody, saved lives. Today, it's just another convenient way to express a distaste or a hate, and it is concerning. But the reality is that there are a small number of wackos,
right?
Who
And even in the general population, you still have those wackos are out there. I mean, it's not relegated to the Jewish religion.
Exactly. You see it in there are a couple of other ground zeros, so to speak, of this stuff around the country.
Sure.
But what's interesting to hear, though, Mayor, is the hypocrisy coming from the Hasidic community. Because this I know for a fact, because my friend tells me this.
Yeah.
Same people that will not get vaccinations, you're going to see those families in vitamin stores almost every day. They spend a ton of money on vitamins, which, by the way, have not been FDA approved, most of them. So how do you make that argument? How do you do that?
I mean, I think they're following a line of thought that has nothing to do with Judaism, that they've sort of latched onto this way of thinking. I find it to be faulty and very problematic, sort of just as the general health issue, but then to latch onto it and say that this is a Jewish thing, or even to say my rabbi told me this. There were some Hasidic women saying this on the news. I spoke to several Hasidic leaders yesterday in preparation for this. They told me there's not a single Hasidic Rebbe that is anti-vaccination. They all say to get vaccinated. So it's really complicated. And just to sort of talk about why are the numbers higher? This is also something I was trying to figure out with some people in the community. They said because, there's a lot of children in the, especially more to the right in the Orthodox community of a young age, and, sort of people live very close together and do a lot of international travel. And it could be that, having a slightly lower vaccination rate than anyone else. And we're showing right now the numbers are in like 94%, 97% in the Hasidic yeshivas in Brooklyn. For the younger kids, it may be a little bit lower, but it's still above herd immunity numbers. But it could be because people sort of live close together, have a lot of kids close in age. And if the younger set are less vaccinated, that's sort of causing this uptick. But it's really because they've latched onto this sort of, holistic thing, not a Jewish thing.
Right. You even see people using religious exemption excuses. Now, that's absurd.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Listen,
my wife is a school nurse. She's encountered this.
Right.
Just vaccinate and stop the hate.
That's it.
Right.
Very
How
good.
about that?
Excellent job, Allison. Great to see you again.
My new T-shirt.
Mayor, great to see you again.
Thank you.
My new T-shirt.
Hey, that's right. That's a good slogan.
I wish you guys both a very decent Pesach. Enjoy your holiday
Same
next
to
week.
you.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Happy holidays. Have a great Seder. We'll come back taking phone calls on this topic. Special thanks to Allison and Mayor. More of Bernie and Sid right after this.